The October 11 meeting of the Urbana Free Board of Trustees will come to order. Becky, will you call the roll?
Jane Williams? Here. Hannah Matt? Here. Beth Bass?
Here.
Bill Stein? Here.
Here.
Bill Brown? Beth Stein? Miss Shearer?
Here.
Mark Netter?
Here.
Michael Weisman? You guys think those things are pretty good for you guys, right? You know, Bill Brown? Here. Barbara Jones? Yes, you had it backwards, Beth.
Well, I need to know who I was right now. Using that, you know.
Yes, there's a cognitive test out for people my age. You count back from 100 by 7. It's actually,
I was asked to do that the other day. Yeah. Are there additional corrections or modifications to the agenda? Hearing none, we'll move on to a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We have no need to call for an executive session, so we'll move into public comment. Is there any public that wishes to speak? Seeing no real public. You're public, but not other public. We have presentations.
It's after 5.
Yeah. Presentations. The per capita grant. Who's going to do that? Becky? Or
At your place, I have put the chapter that we're reviewing. It is chapter 6 on access. And truthfully, when I went ahead and I did the write-up of the chapter, I had copied from the Illinois State Library website what their definition of access was. What I'm noticing is that in the book, it's much more extensive, and that is what you will see here. This is what the chapter 6, access of serving our public, which is this book here, defines as the criteria we should evaluate when determining access in the library. And so you can see here it says the factors that affect access are hours of service, cataloging, the quality of it, the physical facility, and distance to the physical facility, the quantity, quality, relevance, formats, and arrangement of the collections, quality and quantity of staff, public relations, policies on use of collection and services, and availability of collections and services outside the library. When looking at this chapter, we're in very good shape in terms of meeting the requirements. And I'll just go through these briefly, touching on highlights of the ways that we're meeting access. The library is open 70 hours per week, Sunday year-round, and 4 evenings to 9:00 p.m. The website is updated daily, provides a method of patron inquiry, meaning they can email a department head. I think all of our names are on there, and also email departments. And it provides 24/7 access to online resources for people that are Urbana card holders. Staff are provided at 3 separate locations for reference and readers advisory all hours that the library is open. Internet access is available via public computers and free Wi-Fi. And the vast majority of the collection is available for self-check. Right now, the only 2 areas, I think we determined them, and Dawn, can you help me with this one? It's adult education, entertainment CDs and DVDs, and music CDs, is that right? In the past year, the maximum renewal of items was increased to 5, and more materials are now available for hold requests. I think specifically that was games was one of them. Is that right? Library provides a document magnifier, 2 lighted magnifiers, assistive technology computers, a large print collection, audio books, and circulating books for people that might have difficulty viewing things in the library or reading. Home delivery service is available to card holders unable to visit the library. There's also an optional delivery for people that live at Clark Lindsay. And Dawn, could you explain to us how that works?
People who live at Clark Lindsay are able to, if their accounts are tagged as courtesy delivery, they have the option to place their own holds, make their own selections, and we'll put them on our hold shelf for them to pick up throughout the week. However, if they are not picked up by Wednesday, then they are sent courtesy delivery to Clark Lindsay then on Thursday morning. So they have the option. So a lot of people, when it's really bad weather outside, they'll take advantage of that. I don't feel like going out today, so they will deliver their items to them and then pick up the next week as well.
May I interrupt to say that there are a lot of people I live at Clark Lindsay. I can assure you it is enormously appreciated. So, thank you.
The library's telephone and fax numbers are available on the website through DexKnows, which is an online service, and various other online sites. I think a lot of people Google us. There's also Yelp. We have something on Yelp, so those are various ways that people can find out when we are open, or our telephone numbers are, or our fax numbers are. Things that we need to work on, and they're very minor. These are works in progress. Increase the number of library materials available for self-check. This is something that we're continuously looking at, is to make sure that our library, our materials are available for self-check. As we talked about, is that the adult DVD, entertainment DVDs, and music CDs are two things that still are not available to the public, but we're working on entertainment DVDs already. Some of them are now available. The ones that are recently checked in are now available for people to select from, and that will be, we're still working on that to make that larger. Update wayfinding signs throughout the library. The signage that we have in the building, there's a particular set of signs that are tan and they have maroon border on them. A lot of them are outdated. I think that the books on disc have now moved and they're in a different area. There's also names of departments that are now different. So that will be done, and we hope to have that done by the end of this calendar year. And continue the ongoing review of lending regulations to permit maximum use of library materials. That is an ongoing discussion that we will have. Does anyone have any questions for me?
Go back a slide, if you would, please. Go back one slide, please. I had a question, I just didn't understand the term there.
Oh, you know what? I missed the slide. One went too fast. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
well, go ahead and do that one first.
I was going to say, it's just,
You first.
Oh, that's it, that's what I, all right. That's why I said, wait, I did the outreach part, that's what I had
yes.
posted on.
I have two
Okay.
outreach events in fiscal year
Yes.
2016. The library offers remote checkout of materials and library card registration when we're doing outreach as well. Holdings information for the library collection are in MARC format and accessible through CU Catalog, WorldCat from OCLC, and Local History Online. The collection, now this is a question that came up last month, is that the collection includes adult and teen materials in Spanish, children's material in Spanish and Chinese, and actually I didn't include all of them. In the following languages for children, we have American Sign Language, German, French, Italian, Russian, Hebrew, Arabic, Japanese, Korean, and Vietnamese, and more. Thank you.
Wow.
And meeting rooms are available for the public. Last year, there were 2,397 room bookings in fiscal year 2016.
365 those in and out a few times. Sheesh.
Was this the one you wanted to
No,
look at?
I'm looking. Go one, let's see.
The first one.
No, let's just go forward from here. I'm sorry, I won't take up all your time. One more? Should have written it down. Oh, the top line. Maximum renewal of items was increased to 5. Okay, and more, so I can do 5 renewals at one time?
Correct.
Okay, I didn't know
You
that.
can renew things 5 times,
Okay.
except for, is there one thing that can't be?
Special.
I thought you told me there was one thing.
They're all 5 now.
Oh.
Now
So
that-
I can-
now that
I can
the-
do
now that
5.
the games-
Yeah, as long as they don't have-
I can have 5 books and renew them all, right?
There's a lot of, you can have one item and renew it 5 times.
Oh, okay, I have this book 5 times, okay. And these 4 I have to put back. Okay, no, that's fine, I read that, and I was just curious. Make sure I understood. So I didn't make a jerk of myself. That's what I was asking.
No.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
Action items, board meeting minutes of September 13th, bills for September 7th, payroll for September 16th, bills for September 21, payroll for September 30th, and bills for October 5. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. Intergovernmental Agency of Shared automotive automation system between the Champaign Public Library and the Urbana Free Library. You have that in your packet. It is a final,
And this is probably a dumb question, but what's the difference between, which is the one that's not all underlined and everything, the final one? I had two
the final one's on the top, isn't it? Or is it?
They're both, they're both the draft, they're the same thing, except one is showing you how it looks
Oh,
before.
okay.
How it's showing.
And this is showing you the clean copy.
Okay, that's all right, okay, so they are the same.
Yes.
That's what I thought.
And the old one expires,
December 1st.
so that's why this says, and I like that phrasing, it started December 1st. And so you didn't have to do the end, beginning and end, but that way it was done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Does anybody have any questions about them?
I'd just like, since I'm new, a brief summary of why the shared system with Champaign is a preferred option to the other one. Just some of the things, Heartland, is it? Heartland? I don't know the new
Oh,
one.
sure. So we covered that in,
Yeah,
so,
right.
Dawn, would you like to?
Just short and sweet, kind of.
Well, there was a lot of uncertainty when the systems were going, went from 9, I think it was, down to 2.
Yeah.
And it was going to be a huge, system in the lower half of the state. And
Yeah, okay.
it's, Champaign and Urbana are by far the largest libraries and the largest collections. And there was, some concern about how the decision, we weren't sure how the decisions were going to be made in terms of lending, rules, cataloging, what kind of, what we'd be allowed to do, what we wouldn't be allowed to do, that kind of thing. And the expectations for our collections in terms of, if we're sending things all the time, when will we get them back? Because obviously with bigger collection, we're going to be doing more
Most
of
of the-
the
yeah.
lending as well with the system. And so those were, and cost was,
Cost was a
I think, because we, as bigger libraries also, it's proportional how much cost based on the size of the library, the collection, or the budget. I can't remember what the criteria was, the budget, but we would be a significant portion of the cost then too.
Economically, it was just about a draw, wasn't it? Pretty,
Okay, yeah, it was
pretty
good.
close.
A good
Currently, it is.
report,
I'm
but-
not sure how it
Yeah.
was in the past. The other piece is that when this transition was being made, we went to Polaris with Champaign, and the IHLS was on a different system
Different
still.
system, yeah, okay.
And so, yeah, they migrated to Polaris a year or two after we did.
Okay. Yeah.
So we weren't thrilled with the previous system. So the idea of going to a different ILS that had some different functionality,
Mhm.
different possibilities was very appealing.
Okay.
And is
Knowing
it
that They
fair,
were not on the time frame that was going to be short.
Uh-huh.
is it fair to say you've had more input this way, probably?
Oh, enormously.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are some shared settings that, have to be shared between Champaign and us, but the vast majority, we could select what was better for our community, our patrons, and make some decisions that.
Yeah, that sounded like you had independence within that, yeah. But I was just curious, because when I lived here before, it was Lincoln Trail, and it's all changed, and I'm just trying to get my head around the new, what it looks like.
Yeah, Champaign was pretty confident they were going to be leaving, and that's, of course, our biggest sharing
Yeah,
partner.
yeah, sure.
That was a factor as well.
Yeah,
Am I correct in gathering that there are also virtually no negatives going in this direction? There are no downsides. Okay.
Champaign could
That's
absorb.
how I read it, but I just
Champaign
wanted
could
to make sure.
absorb, the specialized IT help that we didn't have at the time. They had room for the servers, and so, yeah, that's really a good way to put it.
A lot of ups and no downs.
So I talk about this stuff every now and again at home, and this person I live with goes, "What do you mean Urbana and Champaign aren't part of this? That doesn't seem right. Is it not, do you review it or think about it? I mean, basically we would be lending out more materials, and so we don't want to participate in this. statewide thing?
No, not exactly. We still do a lot of blending,
Okay.
a lot of blending.
That does not affect it.
During ILL to the other,
Yeah.
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 But could you foresee at some point where it might be feasible to be part of the whole state system or not? Does Champaign ever like think about perhaps
I can't
reviewing
speak for
this? or-
Champaign.
no?
I know that they do review it. A couple of years back, when Marcia was still the director, she had actually gotten a quote to see what it would cost to go back to share. And then she let us know she got a quote because of course there were ripples. So we got a quote too to find out so that we could be responsible. So we can look at the financial piece as one element of the conversation, as Don was saying. The ability to have local control of the system is a factor as well.
Okay, yeah.
And so it is, as Chris was saying, it's pretty much a wash and maybe a little bit less expensive, but it is close.
If Champaign decided to opt out of this arrangement and join share, then would that cause us some problems? Would we be able to maintain our own?
We would have to decide if we wanted to take on the responsibility of hosting the Polaris server here.
Oh, and the technical support? and all that
Correct,
stuff.
because we would, if they choose not to do that part for us that we pay them for, then we would have to do it ourselves or do some type of cloud option, which they're looking at in the future. So with this particular 5-year renewal, they're purchasing new servers, but for the next one, there's the possibility of going to some type of cloud-based
Champagne's
servers.
got either two or three IT staff? Full-time?
3 full-time.
3 full-time IT staff.
Thanks.
Additional questions? Do I hear a motion to approve the agreement?
So moved.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Any further questions? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. I thank you. Okay, a home field energy invoice for $10,391. $391 throws us over, so we have to have a vote. Is there any, I think I'll just ask if there's any questions about what's being proposed.
Yeah, I'm not entirely clear because I think it's a technology, I think, as we live. So what are we asking them to do?
It's over 10,000, is that?
Yeah.
It's just for,
Yeah.
it's just for power, for electricity. It's just the one bill happened to come out, over 10,000.
10,000.
Yeah.
Any particular reason why it went up?
Summer months are heavier just
Sure.
because of the such, and so we're
Okay,
getting
so it's
into that. Yeah.
Just air conditioning, that's all.
Pretty much.
Did we switch from Ameren to Homefield at some point, or was that automatic?
We went with the city, with the electric, but the gas is still through Ameren, so you'll see bills for both now. One will be gas and one will be electric. We went with the city, doesn't bill for electric.
Do we get the same municipal aggregation rate that the residential people get?
We got the city still, which is that or better.
Okay.
Just after Becky had it all figured out.
Is there a motion to approve this item?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any further questions? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you, it's passed. Alpha control proposal.
I'm going to be talking about that. We put forth the proposal for the alpha controls, but in talking about this, we wanted to kind of talk about it in a bigger sense. Also at your places, there is a copy of the most recent Penniman proposal. And the alpha controls is also in that proposal, but we're recommending to move forward with the alpha controls because it is failing. Right now, we've had some, you noticed in your board packet, there was some indication that we had some problems over the past month or so with being hot one day, cold the next day, so there's some issues going on. And not all of it has to do with alpha controls, but there are things happening. But the Henniman proposal, the one thing I will tell you about that, we gave that to you. I also, before, you probably aren't realizing this yet, but right before the board meeting, I sent all of you an electronic copy of the proposal as well, and that includes more information. It has a copy of the Liebert unit that was proposed for the archives, and that was like about 20 pages, so we didn't want to run that all off, so we sent it to you electronically. But we're closer now than we were. What we're going to say is that if you could look that over, and over the next few weeks, if you have questions, to email me and also copy Celeste. I am going to be out of town between October 19th and the 28th, so both of us will field those questions, but we would like to be able to next month be able to make a recommendation to move forward and possibly vote on it. So do you have any questions now about any of it that I might be able to answer?
But that's a whole Henneman. You're really wanting approval of the alpha control now because
Right,
we're.
but I wanted to speak
Yeah.
about it in a bigger sense as well. We're just voting on the alpha control right now.
So just a high-level question, did they address the points we asked them to address?
That is what I need to know. Because there are so many questions that you had during that meeting that Henneman was here. I would like for you to really look through that and make sure that those questions are answered. And so that's why if you could send those to us, we will get the answers. I spoke with Henneman right before I came in here because I had a couple of questions for them, and I have his cell phone number. So,
Are you feeling better about their answers?
I think that this proposal is close, the draft is closer than we have seen. They've included a few more options, which we like. They put a little bit more into the timeline, I think. And there's a couple of options in there that have, there's one about a rattling fan, there's one about insulation on the chiller pipe, and then there's something with replacing the refrigerant. Now, obviously, we had a problem in the past month that has kind of provided an opportunity to take care of the refrigerant now. But Davison Hack, they were absolutely marvelous this past month. They're kind of pursuing to see if they can do that because there's a problem. Apparently, I'm learning a lot about refrigerant. I'm learning a lot about this. Is that I was like, so tell me the difference between these things. And it's kind of like it's the difference between putting diesel and gasoline in your car. So it's that critical. So they're seeking that information about that. I don't have the answers for that yet.
So in this alpha proposal, there's nothing in there that would, I mean, we're doing it before we do the air conditioner or the total project. So is there any, would it be any virtue to wait till afterwards, or have you checked with Henneman to say, should we buy such and such a package, or might we have to add more to it once we?
Well, the alpha proposal actually first came to us at the end of December of 2015, I think, and then in January we had a second one from them. This actually was recommended that we consider it last year, almost a year ago. And I think that what was decided is that because we were so close to discussing this overarching, the whole HVAC system, that we decided to wait at that time. And it is included in the Henneman proposal, same price. I was very surprised that the price came back the same as it was last year. But basically the system is failing, kind of forcing us to make a decision right now. When I spoke with Dan said that he considers this a high priority for us to consider. So.
Who's Dan?
Dan from Davison Hack, who was taking care of our system for years and years.
Okay.
So, if we approve Henneman, once they get into the system and start working, they're not going to turn around and say, oh, all this alpha stuff has to come out because...
No, it isn't. Actually, it's, as I said, it's in their proposal.
Right.
And when I spoke with Henneman tonight, I did tell them that we were going to be talking about this tonight.
Okay.
No reaction with them whatsoever. And it, look, no reaction. There was never a response. I mean, because they know. I actually, when I sent them some questions when we were working on some of this, the last proposal. I told them that the system was failing. at
And
that
they
time.
know we're up against a wall, and we have to deal with this now, and they'll have to follow on to that.
In other words, it's compatible with whatever options they're
Yes,
thinking of.
I
next, so-
verified that with them.
Yeah, good.
What is the price tag? I don't,
Yeah, on the second
Page
page.
2.
okay. Are there any, well, do I hear a motion that we approve the Alpha?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any further questions? If not, all those in favor of the Alpha proposal, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign? Well, we're on our way. Thank you. Okay, the next thing we have is a discussion of the intellectual freedom. And Barbara, boy, as more I read, the more I asked. So go ahead.
Okay,
She's worked at this for years.
I had 40 years. I looked it up. This was really my professional focus for 40 years, was intellectual freedom, and then privacy got added to the portfolio about 10 years ago. And I just want to say as a preface that I know Bob Doyle really well, I know ILA really well, and a lot of times ILA worked with my office in Chicago at American Library Association on this. We also worked on laws with him and with Kip Kuhlmeyer on legislation. So a lot of what's here, it's like we either helped write it or we agree with it. So, you know, I don't know what to, I don't want to go through too much and I leave some time for your questions. I'm really happy to be in a community where there has been very little intellectual freedom challenge that I know of. I know there was a huge controversy about Madonna in the Champaign Public Library at one point, but it was resolved.
She was there?
Yeah, right. And Paula Kaufman at the University of Illinois, you may not know this about her, but she got a lot of awards when she was at Columbia University in the 80s. The FBI was going after international students at Columbia to find out what they were accessing, what kind of online journal articles they were reading, and she just said, no, you're not going to find out. So she got a lot of awards for that. So we've got a nice tradition in this community, is what I'm saying. Let me see what kind of comments I have here.
On that one alone, the fact that we do not keep record, we can say no, right? To what people are reading.
Oh,
So Polaris allows patrons to keep their reading history, which we talked about, but we as staff don't have
Yes.
access to that.
Yes.
yes.
And I can tell, I mean, if you were to ask me right now on the staff side, I could tell, I could see what any of you have checked out, but we don't share that without a subpoena.
Okay.
Yeah.
There has to be a compelling reason.
Yes.
And then
Yeah.
once you turn it back in, it goes away.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's like, yeah, patrons' right to privacy. Illinois has a really good confidentiality statute, so it's right in here on, if you're interested sometime on page, there are no pages, 59. And all 50 states have a confidentiality statute, so in all states, and they're different, but all states have some level of protection for patron records for privacy. I just made a couple of notes that trustees are committed to freedom of information when we commit and take an oath of office to do this. Selection policy, do you want to say anything about selection and how important it is to have one?
We actually, in September, I think it was, upon every 2 years, we do
Okay.
evaluate the collection development policy according to state law, and there is a note about request for reconsideration there.
Yeah.
And we do have a procedure recently updated with the new form for that.
So-
Luckily, we don't need to use it, but.
Yeah, right, but it's there, and I just want to say, I mean, the importance of having the written policy, just in case, and it's funny, but a lot of times, really good libraries like this one think because we're really good, we don't need it. And it's just, I've seen time and again that that's just not always the case, because something crazy can always come up. Why challenges occur on page 28. I just wanted to make a note here about the Supreme Court in this area. They've been really good to the library community, including Justice Scalia was actually quite good for the First Amendment. I always have to say that on the importance of video games being protected by the First Amendment. Thank you to Justice Scalia for that. And that the public has the right to receive information, and librarians have the right to share it. And that's important. That is actually in this Brennan decision, the Texas v. Johnson, where there's a lot of really good prose in there, but it really gets into the idea that librarians do have that right to give out information to the public too. So we could never be punished for that. They're a policy to handle challenges. You've got that covered. And again, when I'm done, if you have any questions, I'm happy, or maybe Celeste, to talk about it. Access to the internet, yes, yes, yes. With as few barriers as possible is what ILA, the American Library Association, recommend. Generally, I'm opposed to anything that creates barriers to information. And I'm working on a book right now that's going to talk about how poor people have, from cradle to grave, the least access, quality access to information because of so many barriers put in their way. And it's really important to me, and one of the things that I'm very interested in is that low-income families have the same, that the public library act as a leveler, so that low-income families who don't have access to the internet have access in the library. Because there's a lot of evidence to show that information, when you're born, pretty much, depending on the neighborhood and your demographic, your access can be pretty low, and it continues through your schooling, and it really affects your ability to get a job and your ability to go to college, et cetera, et cetera. So access to the internet is huge in making, to try to level the playing field, if you will. Okay. I did want to say that in terms of the Children's Internet Protection Act, where libraries have to sign, if they get the reduced rate. Do you get the E-rate here?
Don't.
Yeah, that's good. But, I mean, okay, back to what I was talking about, libraries that take the E-rate have to filter the internet. And so poorer library districts have to filter through no fault of their own. A lot of the librarians just really dislike it intensively, but we're fortunate if you can, like Chicago Public Library, can turn down the E-rate and therefore have unfettered access. And I just wanted to add that no library has ever been sued for non-compliance to the E-rate filtering. You sign a paper saying, I will filter, and nobody's ever been sued or investigated.
Barbara, what exactly are we filtering out here?
Okay, it depends on which software you get. But filtering is pretty much for, it started out to be filtering out obscenity. And again, I'm going to editorialize. You can add to it.
So no watching the debates?
You see, that's the problem. I mean, you know.
No sex ed.
Right. I mean, I'm just so happy to be on this board because it's so many. I've attended so many board meetings around the country where people really do want to protect children, in particular, from certain sexuality, bad language, LGBT issues, things like that. And what my office always argued was that it's doing children a disservice to overprotect like that. Back to filters. They are software, they're not human brains. And there are some really good examples on page 30 of the kind of things that can get filtered out. The one I always used to use was breast cancer because of the word breast. For a long time, filters would filter out anything about breast cancer. I think that's pretty much been fixed now. But filters tend to block out. The put it this way, you can't really say, because I have a filter, I've protected children from obscenity. Because no, it doesn't, things slip through, because it's not a human brain with a judgment. So, and the example I like to give is that filters are color conscious, and I don't know if everybody's aware of that, but dark, shadowy images get filtered, whereas lighter colors don't. And it means that people of certain races and people of color tend to get filtered. The visual tends to get filtered more than white people. And that's something else will be in my book. I can give you a really good example that one of my library friends from St. Louis was running out of her office after work to go to the St. Louis Opera. And she was at her library, which is filtered, and she wanted to look up where's the parking lot, and the St. Louis Opera was filtered out. Why? She thinks, she looked and looked, couldn't figure it out. The soprano on the cover of the web had a very dark cleavage, and that's probably why it got filtered out. So I'm saying these are not perfect instruments. And they're expensive, too. So if you don't have to do it, don't do it. Okay. Then finally, I just wanted to go to the terms at the end. I would say that my pet peeve, in all the years I've worked on this, is when people say this is pornographic, because pornography is not a term of law. Pornography is what any individual in this room thinks is pornographic.
We know it when we see it.
Right. And
I think that was a judge, too.
There's a website, it was Potter Stewart, and who said, I know it when I see it. But yeah, there's a website called Food Porn, and it's for people who really like really pretty food. I mean, it's a word, it's a popular culture word. 3 types of content are not covered by the First Amendment, are not protected. One is obscenity, and there is a good definition on page 33 that is not protected. Child pornography is not protected. There is a definition on page 32. And harmful to minors is not protected. However, in the state of Illinois, and I looked at this just before I got over here to make sure I'm right about this, libraries have an exception. And because harmful to minors includes things like naked bodies. And the problem in libraries and museums, I think, is pretty obvious. And so in Illinois, libraries and museums have an exception, and medical schools and medical libraries. So if you have questions, I think that's the best way to do this, Chris.
I got the idea that things that we would screen from children, if the parent requested, they'd have to be granted. Is that, where did I get from this, I thought?
That?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, because you might want to talk about what your policy is here.
We recommend that if parents have questions, that they sit next to their children so that they can use the internet together and the parent can have those teachable moments with their child. Because every family has different standards as to what's acceptable viewing or not. So I have, in prior libraries, families that come in to check out rated R horror slasher films with a 7-year-old child, and that's what they watched as entertainment. So everyone has different family standards, so when people have questions, we recommend togetherness.
Do we have a policy that states that we recommend then?
No, we literally recommend it to people.
Okay.
And we don't act in loco parentis. We're not the schools, we're not acting as their parents when they're with us.
Yeah.
And I've seen time and time again, and again, you can't put this in a policy or a law. A librarian sitting down with a parent, it prevents 90% of bad things from happening with parents fighting the library on challenges. I can't tell you how many times in my office we had success stories of when librarians sat down with the parents and respected them and listened to them. And most of the time, you'll have a parent go, okay, I can see that. I can see that. And what a lot of times librarians say is, you should do with your child what you wish. And if there's something you don't want your child to see, that's up to you. But the library is not in loco parentis. But your neighbor might think, oh, I want my child to see that. And most people, if you say that, I mean, I don't know if you've had any bad experiences with parents, but... Oh, okay.
Just,
Yeah, right.
Over the years.
The usual, yeah, right, but yeah, so. Any other questions? Yes.
So I went to see the Snowden movie, and everybody talked about telephone records, but that's internet records and emails, and is not lending history, is it not susceptible to that kind of collection? Because we're transmitting it, I call up, I look at my things, I renew these books. Is there not a way that somebody, the government, could not just capture those and see what I was reading?
Yeah. There is. There is.
So yes, there is a way that anything that is electronic can be captured. We do use encryption, which should make it exponentially more difficult for that to happen. But if someone's system on the other end gets compromised, if they're on a public Wi-Fi and there's some sort of sniffing device going on there, there could be a multitude of situations where someone could get that information. If, again, everything is housed at Champaign, if Champaign gets infected somehow, just like all the financial data breaches that have been occurring from things server-side getting infected, that could happen. But normal day-to-day stuff.
It would have to be something where somebody hacked into a particular system, not like,
correct.
oh, we're using AT&T as our carrier, and so therefore they can see everything that we do.
Correct.
Okay.
So anything in between is going to be encrypted. They're not going to see anything except for gibberish.
But it is a huge issue. Libraries are grappling with, so, yeah.
I've got a different
Yes.
question on internet access. Do you know, does the ALA take any position on net neutrality?
Yeah, ALA is pro net neutrality, and we've issued several, what do you want to call it, declarations about that, and have joined a lot of alliances in Washington, D.C. to lobby for net neutrality.
I hope so, but I just
Yeah,
didn't
no, it's
have
an
any
important
awareness on
issue. I was telling somebody the other day, I was in Washington, they thought, oh, you worked in Washington. I said, no, I lived in Chicago, but I was in Washington a lot, and net neutrality was one of the things.
Still good.
So, again, I really think that librarians understanding this and sitting down with people, a lot of things can be, you can have a whole list of your policies when you walk in the door. Don't do this, don't do that, do this, do that. And nothing substitutes for a librarian sitting down with a parent or with a child or with somebody who's upset about something. And it really can nip a lot of problems at the bud.
Absolutely.
And I see that here. I mean, you know, I lived here and used this library, and I think that's evident that that's happening here. So good, thank you.
I work in the schools, and of course they're blocking all this stuff, and it just like spurs these kids on to
Of course.
figure out ways around it.
Oh, I have great stories, yeah. School libraries in California, the kids found out that stuff is blocked in English but not in Spanish. And so a lot of kids were learning Spanish. Their buddies, their Hispanic fellow student buddies were saying, oh, this is what it says.
That's why they should start young, because it's much easier to learn language
Absolutely.
than cycle through
Yes.
Spanish, Portuguese.
A great way to learn. And, oh, could I tell you stories? You're right. Kids have figured
In
this out.
school, you can't have a teacher sitting beside every student.
Yeah.
I mean, and these computer labs, you can see from behind maybe, but it's really hard to.
Yeah.
Well, and these kids all have smartphones.
Well, that's the other thing. That's right. I know, and that's the thing with kids with limited income, that if their only access is the schools and the public libraries, if the schools are blocked, which many are, most, then the public library may be their only other option. So that's why I'm so pleased when filtering's not required. So, anything else?
I'll just put in a little plug. Fingers crossed, we applied for a grant with the Champaign Public Library for what was called the FLY lending kits. It would be 20 laptops, hubs. There were 3 pieces, and hotspots that across the 3 locations, there are 2 libraries in our, we would circulate them to people. And so
That's
we will
great.
see, there was no deadline on the grant application, so we're not sure when we'll hear back, but it was a great opportunity to talk amongst ourselves and talk about the needs of our community. And if we don't get the grant, then we can have conversations about, is this something that we would want to do as libraries with our own budgets, grant funds, donations, things like that, so.
Exactly, because kids are gonna, if they don't have high-speed internet at home, and I mean, you know, you look at some of our homes, geez, our son had, okay, uni-high was unfiltered, he had speed internet at home, he had parents who were not gonna filter what he, you know, and then some kids just don't have that.
Yeah.
So. It's great stuff. I spent 40 years on it because it's gray. It's not black and white. It's really, it's about how you apply it and how professional you are.
And it's really new, I mean, in a way.
Yeah.
Because of the internet.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, Barb.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We brought it along.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
You've already
It was
earned
a lie. It's a lie.
earned your spurs. MC, you've got a report for us for capita grant.
Yes, sir. Sorry, I had to run today, so I wasn't here to set this up, so, oh, there we go, okay, good. So, board members, tonight just wanted to briefly talk about the impact of the EDGE assessment that we completed last year. And in August of last year, you were given information about the library conducting the EDGE assessment. And just quickly wanted to recap. So the EDGE is an assessment tool for public libraries, which offers guidance and peer library comparison in 4 areas. Those are planning, advocacy, patron outreach, and public services. The assessment portion includes a 20-page workbook with 160 questions asking whether or not you're doing a particular thing. The questions can have 4 answers. 1, yes, we are doing that particular thing. 2, no, we are not, but we plan on doing so within the next year. 3, no, we are not. We would like to, but cannot at this time for a multitude of reasons. Or 4, no, we are not doing that particular thing and we have no plans on doing so. These 160 questions encompass 3 areas: community value, community engagement, and organizational management. After completion of the assessment, libraries are given a score out of a possible 1,000. Last year, our score was 550. As I mentioned last year, I will mention again, I know 550 seems low, but if you look at our peer libraries, you will see that their average score was 569. So in actuality, we're only 3% off from what our peer library scores were. For a full review of the assessment and everything that I went over last year, I invite you to go to the website, and under your Right to Know page, there, under planning documents, there's a link for EDGE assessment, and that covers all of the reports and everything that I went over this time last year. Unfortunately, state funding for the EDGE assessment was withdrawn earlier this year, so we are unable to reassess or see what our peer library scores are today. However, we are able to do a recalculation of where we stand today using last year's score sheets. So as of today, if we were to take the exam, our score would be 640, which is a 16% increase in our score last year, and is a 12%, and is 12% higher than peer library scores last year. Some of the things we have done which have allowed the score increase: new software on our public computers, including audio editing, video creation, web development software. We have circulating Nooks in the children's department. We have Google Chromebooks that are being circulated in the children's department and in the computer lab. We have cross-training for technology-related duties for staff members. Wireless printing, we rolled out, allowing patrons to print from a multitude of devices, cell phones, tablets, laptops. We have video conferencing software that's available. Right now, it is through Google Hangouts, and actually within the next few weeks, Skype will be available. So again, patrons will be able to get our laptops and they'll be able to video conference with the two of those. And for ADA compliance, we made changes to our website, which we are hoping to unveil within the next month. It has a lot of changes made specifically for ADA compliance.
I have a question about ADA compliance. How do you, what, is there a list, a checklist for websites, or how do you do that with the website?
There are a lot of, there's no hard, fast checklist, but there are a lot of
Best
recommendations from different.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's a list of best practices.
Correct,
Okay.
best practices, yes.
Thank
So,
you.
and we, going with what those best practices were and speaking with experts at the university to do this day in and day out, we were able to figure out what our weaknesses were, compare them to software that people may use who have vision impairment, hearing impairment, the software they use, we put against our website to make sure that it was behaving correctly and combination of those. So we still have a bit more to do, and some of the pending implementations we have are technology training classes, and adult and youth services will be rolling those out right now. They're developing one for databases, for different databases that we have. Small business development, again, adult and youth services is working on organizing additional resources for that, with plans of having a dedicated section of the web page for small businesses. Patron survey, myself and Kathy will be working on getting something drafted with hopes of having that done before the end of the fiscal year. Tech competencies are actually close to being completed from the tech committee, from the staff tech committee, and we'll be passing those on to the admin team in terms of getting those into this year's annual evaluations beginning of next year. Staff guides we'll be getting for some basic technology troubleshooting for staff members, and e-government, again, adult and youth services is working on getting some things compiled that will be on the new website again, which we'll hopefully have within the next month. So with those, factoring in everything, again, using last year's score sheet, that would make our score increase to 775. This is actually a 41% increase in where we were at last year, and gives us a 36% score above what our peer library scores were last year. So for the complete summary of the benchmarks we've completed since last year and ones that are still pending, you can review the report that's in your board packet. And aside from that, are there any questions?
The benchmark 3, which was the support of small businesses and e-government and such, is that because the resources are not yet developed for those?
For the e-government, no.
Because we're lacking.
Those resources were not developed. We're working on those. The small business portion, we actually did have some resources for small business, but due to a lack of use, we kind of pulled back, but we are.
But that lack of use becomes, is that our issue because we're not promoting the fact that they exist, the resources exist, or why aren't they being used?
Can I direct those? Small business, the databases that we kind of pulled back because they weren't being used.
They were not being used as much as we look, when we look at a cost of a database, we see the cost and how many times it's been used so that we have an average cost per use, and it just wasn't justifying.
But I guess my concern is, if they weren't there to begin with, that wouldn't be used. Okay, there's a lack of resources in that area, but are we not promoting to small businesses and to e-government that we have these resources for them to use somehow? Are we falling down?
Well, we are looking into perhaps getting some sponsorship for some of our databases that.
It's a cost factor.
Banks, that kind of thing. It is. But we did have the UBA breakfast here last month, and we had a display of all of the things that were some of the things that we offer for small business. So trying to promote to small business that they can use the library.
To speak to your point also, Chris, to speak to it from a different direction, selling databases to the public is hard.
Yeah.
So you have to go into a certain portal. If you're not in the library, you have to log in somehow or authenticate. And people are used to just Googling. And so that's always been a hard part for libraries. We pay for databases. They're amazing resources. They're peer-reviewed articles sometimes. They're reputable. But you have to get people to log in through your place. And so it's always a hard sell.
Well, I looked at that and I thought, that could really be a winner. I'm just thinking, what was the idea behind it? Who had the idea? What were they thinking? I mean it in a good way. Because isn't that something that strikes you as could be developed to the point where businesses would come to us and say,
Yeah.
I need MC for 4 hours next week because I'm building up a new development proposal to pitch to a company that's moving into town or thinking about it. I mean, it just seems like that could be a real winning area.
If you have expertise, and so part of what our job is to pull together different community resources so that people who are wanting to start their business, we don't have to do it all for them because we can't. But we can say, well, if you want to talk to someone about this idea, go to SCORE and have a retired business person talk to you about that, or go to the business library campus for this piece, or look at this database for this piece, and here's how you can search and create a mailing list of potential clients.
But where was the expertise when something led whoever came up with that idea to propose it? I mean, there had to be expertise available. You think?
For
The business development, database development. I know it's not here in town, but.
I guess I'm having trouble picturing what the data, sort of thing the database would be. So this particular one, and so whether it would be something that would be more natural to Google for, or something that would really, yeah.
There's a database called Reference USA, for example, and it's a list of businesses which talks about the size of the company.
Just has all kinds of information, and even some of the officers and have contact them.
And that's a national.
There are national databases that libraries can subscribe to, and sometimes they're more like mailing lists, so you
It's more for
can get lists
generating.
of leads and businesses. And some of them you can say, I would be driving down the freeway, so I want to go to places off of I-75 that are pet stores that do this kind of thing. But you have to know how to use the databases, which is where library staff can come in handy if you've got the training to use them. But they're very rich. They're these national things, but it takes time to learn them and to teach them. But if you know what to do, they're amazing and powerful. And they're expensive.
What did you do with that breakfast? Because I like this idea of developing this area. It sounds like you did that breakfast and did some of this.
Well, the UBA has breakfast at a different place every month, right?
Every month?
And so we had them here in Cherry Alley, chilly morning. And we had a display of some of the things that we have for small business. We're giving out library cards and also giving them information about the library itself. And then just kind of networking, we have breakfast, of course.
How many people?
So, about 20 people. Yes.
When the Chamber of Commerce, I mean, I don't exactly know how the process works, but do they put together a package for prospective people? I mean, how,
Not very good.
I don't know if they
Chambers.
do that anymore.
No, I think
okay.
they've kind of lost
Everything
it.
is-
Haven't they?
Oh, it's all database now? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I just don't know, I'm just asking, 'cause
Yeah.
it seems like it would be terrific if there's some kind of packet, either digital or otherwise, where the library could advertise, we're an asset to the point. I remember when I was at University of Northern Iowa, the library was key because we did incubator help. And I'm just wondering.
Yeah, that's where I was just wondering too.
I'm just wondering too.
Could we- If somebody were to take this and see how far they could run with it, how far would they get?
Another staff person.
But it doesn't,
Well, maybe it's commission-based or something.
it also doesn't sound necessarily like.
Or we're just an intermediate. match
Expensive
people up.
databases would be the key to making that work better.
They're not the only key. It's relationships and getting people in the library to show what we do have. And part of it's workforce development. So again, what does your business need? Do you need us to help raise the level of skills in people who would be your employees? Because that's one thing libraries do.
Yeah.
As well as
And it
helping
might be
explore.
networking with like SCORE and such. I think that would be very logical for
Companies like
business.
Pixel too.
Yeah.
I mean, there are companies a block away doing this stuff. Just a thought.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yep. Absolutely.
Are there other questions, please?
Can you quickly explain the funding thing, why we didn't participate this year?
So last year, the state paid for all the libraries throughout the state to have access to EDGE funding, and earlier this year, they
What's EDGE funding though? Is that funding
This is
to?
the name of the
to
program.
pay, EDGE is the name of the assessment, and it's a cost to take the assessment. And we fortunately were able to
Oh, I
do
see,
it
so
last
EDGE
year.
is that, right, okay.
Other questions?
A lot of good stuff happened this year.
Absolutely.
Is it going to
Barbara.
be back in the state budget? Oh, that's silly. Silly me, never mind.
What budget?
What budget? I'm sorry.
Where have you been?
I know. Just upstate a little.
LSTA grants.
Pardon me?
I said LSTA
Yeah,
grants,
grants.
we want those back too.
So you forgot when you were away that this is really Illinois, so.
I know, it is still.
Okay, moving on. Reports of the Friends. Anna, anything?
No meeting
re-
this month.
Foundation.
I have a couple things if you want.
I can't even remember what happened. Go ahead. You've got it written down, please.
So Larry Joe, former president, came to the meeting. He was unable to attend the last one because of the death of his family.
So they
So
thanked him.
we gave him a library t-shirt and a round of applause for his great support. And thanked him for that. The foundation is queued up to receive a quote-unquote significant bequest from a trust, and I'll leave the person's name out, but it could be between $200,000 and $300,000. And they're waiting some approvals and for things to work its way through the courts. So they are excited for that possibility. You know, it depends how things shift out, but they're pleased about that. There's also a $5,000 gift coming through for children's. That should be coming at sometime at the end of the summer per a letter that was received.
How much?
$5,000. So start thinking.
Oh, she's counting her money.
Start thinking with the $300,000 too. Well, start with high at the top and work your way down to the
The
5,000.
foundation is, we have people working on the letter to send out. They're looking at having a separate letter for people who've already been donors, and then having a letter for people that haven't been donors yet, so they're working on that. And as I told them, I am in the last stages of the pieces and parts for the development director, run that through city HR, and then hope to have someone starting in the position in a full-time capacity after the first of the year. So I reached out to a couple people that have expressed some questions or concerns, and if anyone has any additional feedback as we continue on with developing the interview process and such, if there are things you want to make sure, points you want us to hit on in that process, please let me know within the next couple of weeks, let's say, because once we get that posted, we expect it to be posted 3 to 4 weeks with a position at that level, then it will be rolling and we'll be interviewing and getting someone in.
It says, I meant to look up the membership. I know there was a transitioning, a lot of people transitioned off, but now are they fully populated by committee members?
I believe there are a couple spots open.
There would be.
They tend to leave a couple spots
We
open.
have recommendations. Anybody that have recommendations, we'd like to hear them, because I think there are maybe two. but it's fairly thin.
I think you're right. And looking at, as Kathy mentioned, the latest Henneman proposal, you wouldn't have seen it yet, but the bottom line estimate of potential costs over this now immediate to 15, 20-year future is now in the $900,000 range. So that's not insignificant cost. And again, they're not all right now, but it's something to think about what needs to happen sooner and then later, and just thinking about the roof, the carpet, the other porch, that there are large capital expenses, and whether it's geothermal, 10 years from now, there are going to be significant capital expenditures, and we're thrilled that the city has set aside the $125,000 this year. We're hopeful a similar thing is able to happen next year, but we're going to rely on the foundation to help us as we also continue to put money away. Those are not small things to keep our facility up and running as well as it does.
There was some discussion as to the property lay next to us, and I can't remember what was resolved. Were they going to have a committee? No, okay.
No, they chose to not do that. There is,
Basically, as you know, we're sitting tight on it. No response from there's been attempts to talk to, and no response to the owners. Isn't that fair?
I can say that the realtor had reached out, a realtor from the company had reached out and inquired if there was interest in the library board or the foundations board in the property in a general way, and the answer I was told I could give is there is interest, obviously, and answered some questions of the realtor who didn't have information one might have thought he would have had, given that this is public information out there. And so I haven't heard back from this person. It's been a period of months. So it's bounded by city and library property, so yes, there's interest. But the price needs to be a fair price.
Yeah.
That is what I share.
Heartland Library System. Jeff?
They got $1.9 million through the Secretary of State early enough that they're not going to be biting their fingernails. So they're feeling a bit more confident this year so far. We're working on advocacy, and they're having a little bit of a tough time figuring out who they should be advocating to, since they only represent a certain portion of the state, and apparently the northern system has like 3 people full-time advocating and all that sort of stuff. So it's an interesting exercise to go through who we target, what we say, et cetera, et cetera. They're aware that their staff and their member libraries feel that everything takes place down south and that they really need to meet up here every now and again. So they're going to be meeting in Champaign pretty soon. I'll let you know, so that's good.
Yep.
And a new thing on the horizon, I don't know whether it affects the library, but I wasn't aware, but the federal government passed a bill in December, Every Child Achieves Act, which is like the newest education thing, which has been renamed the Every Student Succeeds Act, ESSA. And apparently this filters down into things that libraries might be able to get money for, schools might be, so they're going to try and make a nice package out of that, so libraries know what they might be able to apply for under this act. That's it.
Okay. Administrative reports. Celeste?
I want to make sure to draw your attention to this delightful thank you note, which was
I couldn't read
on
it.
the inside of the Little Free Library. It's about 7 pieces of tape. And when I took it so we could get a copy of it, the little young lady left bookmarks that she made in there. There's some still left. And so that is really great that this is having an immediate for that one particular person. But we had another gentleman who came in who said he was homeless in between two places. He just found someone who lived within a trailer outside the library districts, couldn't purchase one with us, didn't have $4 to his name. And Becky said, well, we have a Little Free Library. After I said, you can use anything in the library. He said, well, it's about a tank of gas back and forth each way to where I'm staying, so I don't have that. And Becky said, well, Little Free Library, take as much as you want.
Anything else?
I hope to have out by the end of the week, Jane, Bill, sorry it's been months, the information to start talking about our campus plan for the block, getting that group of people together. And we've been talking about community resources that already exist as stated goals, like the city council goals, looking for the USD strategic plan, the United Way strategic plan. What are things our community has already flagged and designated as being important? So as we start strategic planning, we already have a feeling for what is important in our community. So we've started that process.
Okay, most of you read in the paper that my counterpart in Champaign has had an accident and is still, has pneumonia now and is still unconscious, so it's not good, not good at all. For new business, we have the appointment of the ad hoc committee to do the executive director's evaluation, and I have asked Beth and Jeff if they would continue, since last year they wanted to move the time frame and they're more into it than the rest of us, and they have agreed. So I appoint Beth and Jeff to begin to establish the instrument and how you want us to work. Is there any unfinished business come before the group? Seeing none, the meeting is adjourned.